Welcome to the Ashes of the Singularity 2.2 patch overview. The 2.2 patch has launched, and with it comes new features, various improvements, bug fixes, and a ton of balance changes which we've been working on for over 2 months. In this video I'll be explaining some of the more in-depth changes and providing some context and insight. This won't be covering all of the minor changes as there's too many to mention, so there's a link below in the description where you can read through everything and see the specific changes. 2.2 comes with 2 big new features. Modding support allows players to create and distribute their own mods, as well as create new maps and scenarios. Players can now save and watch the replays of their games, so they can learn from their mistakes, watch the strategies of the top players, and produce shoutcasts. Map options have been renamed to better represent what each setting does, and the drop-down menu now has a better outline to separate what isn't a selection. The grid locations of units and the orbital structures has been rearranged for consistency and ease of use between both factions. Equivalent units such as the Zeus and Avenger now share the same grid location. The weapon tooltips have been updated to specify the exact value of armor piercing that each weapon provides. The resource structures have been renamed to economy structures, and orbital structures have been renamed to technology, or tech for short. The in-game chat panel has been moved to the left side of the screen to avoid getting in the way of the player and obscuring their vision. Several maps have been reworked to improve strategic diversity and balance. These are Aven, Cygnus, Espana, Italia, Pine, Vega, and minor updates to some of the maps which were already adjusted in 2.1. 2.2 also adds 3 new maps: Mananun, a 12-player Terran map, Agnius, a 10-player desert map, and Brigid, an 8-player Arctic map. Using artillery units was quite frustrating, as they would not properly utilize their maximum range. Instead, they'd move towards medium range, often getting targeted by base defenses. Artillery units will now close less distance, and issuing a stop order will force them to stay in place and fire without moving. Units affected are the Artemis, Destructor, Hera, Eradicator, Nemesis, and Cronus. One of the most significant changes is to prevent double capping. In high-level games, players were able to capture 2 relays at the start of the match before the creeps would spawn, either by boosting the Nexus with the first engineer or by using an orbital ability. This was not intentional. We view double capping as a frustrating dynamic, and we're removing it because it creates a number of problems. To remove double capping from every map, we are increasing the build time of engineers up to 40 seconds and locking some of the early orbitals behind the quantum relay. To compensate, engineers have their health increased and are getting a cost reduction to allow for a much faster factory to get into the action sooner. We wanted to improve the utility of recon units in order to add more emphasis on outmaneuvering your opponents and countering their strategy. Sensor towers, scout planes, and the Hermes are all receiving a buff to their detection range. On top of this, the Pan and Searcher are receiving a large health increase and are now buildable from the Nexus. Frigates would lose relevancy after the first few minutes as they were easily countered by cruisers. We want frigates to fill a bigger role in the counter system and be more effective against cruisers, as there are so many ways to counter them on top of their lack of scaling with orbital upgrades. The Master was not only too weak compared to PHC frigates, it was also overshadowed by the Reaper. We are increasing its shields and damage, as well as a reduction in build time and logistics. The Reaper was overperforming against the Zeus because it would kite backwards and stay out of the range of the main weapon. The Reaper is getting its desired attack range lowered so it doesn't automatically back away from enemy units. The medic was healing units far too quickly. Stacking up enough medics could effectively make units unkillable. The medic is receiving a reduction to its heal rate to make it more fair for its cost. With the heal reduction to the medic, the PHC frigate suffered. The Brute is receiving more health and damage, while the Archer is receiving more health, gaining armor piercing, and a reduction in build time. The Mauler and Athena were dominating the meta far too much, and we are nerfing them to allow more different unit compositions. They are receiving a small damage reduction to their main weapon so they take longer to destroy other cruisers, as well as a large damage reduction on their secondary weapons so they are much weaker against frigates. The Avenger was in a weird spot because it was too fragile to have an impact in small numbers, but it had so much damage and was so cheap, it was very overpowered when amassed in large numbers. Its massive damage output for only 212 metal made it counter other cruisers and potentially even Dreadnoughts. Its slow firing projectile speed was overshooting and wasting shells on frigates, but less so on cruisers because of their higher health pools. To make it perform more consistently, we are increasing its shields and movement speed, but raising its metal cost to compensate. It's also getting a huge hit to its damage, but an increase to projectile speed to make it perform worse versus cruisers, but better against frigates. The Masochist was way too spammable for something so cheap with 1000 health, so it's receiving a cost increase. The role of the Eradicator was rather unintuitive. It's a big, slow, heavy cruiser, yet it filled the role of a glass cannon, with high damage but low survivability. To make the Eradicator more visually intuitive and fill a role unique to Substrate, it's getting armor in exchange for losing damage. To make the Eradicator and the Hero more usable, they are both receiving an increase to their movement speed. The Caregiver was far too weak and needed some drastic buffs for it to be viable. It's receiving a huge boost to its heal rate and a reduction to its build time and logistics cost. The Artemis was too fragile, and this weakness was visually unintuitive for a unit the same size as other cruisers. We are increasing its health in exchange for a cost raise, as well as increasing its missile attack cooldown to make it weaker against frigates. The Apollo was underperforming, and like the Artemis, it was too fragile for its size. It's receiving an increase to its health and damage in exchange for a cost raise, while gaining some armor piercing so it scales better against heavy PHC aircraft. The Nemesis suffered from its chance to miss, which was quite frustrating when combined with its long reload. We are increasing its accuracy so it can no longer miss. The Hero had a small health pool with a high amount of armor, which made it too fragile when armor piercing units were on the field. To make the Hero more consistent and overall increase its durability, it's receiving a buff to its health but a reduction to armor. We're also increasing the very low build time to make producing the Hero less of a sudden resource drain. Minor changes to other cruisers include a small damage buff to the Destructor, while the Charon and Mobile Nullifiers are receiving a cost decrease. Dreadnoughts were rarely used as they were too expensive and inefficient compared to massing cruisers. To make them more affordable, we are globally reducing their cost by 20%. Substrate Dreadnoughts are receiving some armor to put their durability more in line with PHC Dreadnoughts, and the Overminded Retributor are receiving a large damage buff as they were underperforming. The Cronus is receiving armor piercing due to its low damage, while its desired attack range is being reduced so it won't automatically back away from enemy units. Air rushing had become a frustrating and unfair part of the meta, so there's a few changes coming to mitigate its potency. Most significantly, the Fury and Dominator are losing their ground attack as players were neglecting bombers in favour of massing interceptors and using them for harassment. We want players to deliberately manage their unit composition and not just spam one unit type because it fills several roles. The Dominator is receiving a shield increase and slight cost reduction to make it more balanced versus the Fury, while they're both receiving a small amount of armor piercing so they scale better against heavy PHC air units. The Hades was quite lackluster while the Punisher was overperforming. They're getting their prices adjusted to better balance them for their cost, while the Punisher is getting a rework. To give it a more consistent and fair lethality, it's getting an increase to shields in exchange for a damage reduction. It's also being locked behind the gateway to prevent it from being rushed out so early. The late game economy generally favoured PHC due to how durable refineries are compared to the Harvester, especially as it was an air unit and thus vulnerable to air fighters. We are increasing the Harvester's health so it's more resistant to harassment. The heavy air units were also in desperate need of some buffs. The Rampager is getting a large health increase while the Marauder is getting more damage. The Harbinger is losing some damage in exchange for more shields to make it more consistent. The Aviary and Advanced Air Factory no longer require the Dreadnought Bay in order to make them more accessible and to allow for more strategies involving heavy air units. The PHC Nexus is gaining health in exchange for losing armor to make its received damage more consistent and make base sniping from the Air Harbinger more difficult. Extractors were too fragile and were destroyed too easily in an attack. We are increasing their health in order to make harassing them require a bit more consideration. The substrate assembly is a massive advantage, not only because it shares all basic production, but also because it costs no radioactives. To mitigate this, we are reducing the radioactives cost of the armory. The pricing for tech structures was inconsistent and did not reflect their value. To increase strategic diversity and make late game tech more accessible, we are increasing the cost of some of the underpriced buildings and decreasing the cost of the overpriced. Substrate also suffered from higher radioactives costs compared to PHC, which is being reduced and equalized. There are far too many changes to base defenses to list here, but overall the weak defenses such as the Smarty and Constable are getting a buff, while the overperforming base defenses such as Drone Bays and Annihilators are getting a nerf. Base defenses in general will be weaker as we found them to be too influential. They were slowing down the game too easily. Some overperforming orbitals are getting a price increase to better balance them for their cost. These are Plasma Storm, Drone Swarm, Engineer Drop, Core Centric, and EMP Pulse. So that's it for the 2.2 patch. Click the link below to check out the full list of changes in the forums and leave your feedback. If you haven't done so already, now is a great time to try out Ashes of the Singularity. My work with it has just begun and we already have more great changes on the way for the next patch. Thank you for watching and I hope to see you on the battlefield.